Everyone, and welcome to the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for May 14th, 2024. Our elected body, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Alan Sells, Councilmember David Johnson, Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember G. Lee Hills, Councilmember William Morthland. I'm Randy Knighton, the city attorney. I don't want to be the city attorney.
You want to see it?
I do not want to be the city attorney. You can have
Congratulations,
it.
Randy.
Oh my God, it's totally
Sorry, David. I was going to save us some money. All right.
It has been a long day. I'm Randy Knighton, the city administrator, and along with David's the esteemed city attorney for the city of Roswell, along with Michelle Miller, the executive assistant to the council. And we are here for the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for May 14, 2024. The purpose of committee meetings are for city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and to discuss items listed on the published agenda, as well as provide updates of vital information essential to the operation of city government. And by ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator serve as chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while certainly members of the public are welcome to attend, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings. They are taken at the regular city council meetings on the second and fourth Monday of each month, as well as fifth Monday in open forum. We do encourage residents to engage our online platforms and reach out to our staff talent of the city to provide critical information to you. We would also encourage everyone to visit the city website, the city web service portal, to report concerns, and also visit roswell365.com for a calendar of events. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Administration and Finance and Recreation Committee meeting. Yes, Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, can we move one of the departments? You got admin, finance, ComDev, and Public Works tonight.
Yes.
Can we move Public Works in front of ComDev?
All right, we can certainly do that. Seeing no objections, yes, Councilmember Johnson?
You seconding.
Oh, he's,
Sorry, I made
all
a
right.
motion, we move.
Mayor motions and second by Councilmember Johnson. All in favor of moving Public Works onto the top to first on the committee agenda? All right. And for formality's sake, then, we will open up the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting, which can be found behind the brown divider in your packet. Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for May 14, 2024. And the first item then would be to accept the minutes.
I didn't mean to screw you up. I
No,
just
no,
meant
no.
move it ahead of ComDev.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Move it ahead of ComDev. All right.
There we go. All right.
Should we be up here or should we let somebody else sit up here?
If the committee is fine, we'll go ahead and go with Public Works. We're good? All right. Thank you. All right. So we'll approve the minutes of the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for April 9th, 2024. We'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hill, second by Councilmember Johnson. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, and so the minutes are approved for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for April 9th, 2024. We will note for the record, under Public Safety and Public Works, we show no public safety fire action items or public safety police action items. Therefore, we'll move to item number 2 on the agenda, Public Works. Consideration to award a contract to Sea Green Services for the operation and maintenance of the Roswell Transfer Station. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's item that we're going to be talking about is a rebid of our transfer station operations and maintenance. But before I get into a quick presentation, I'd like to make sure that we acknowledge that Nick Pizzello, our solid waste division manager, is up here, had a big hand in helping with getting this contract to where we are. So,
There you go, Nick.
yeah, everyone loves Nick to be up here. So, wanted to give just a little bit of a history on this contract because we only do these once every number of years. So, from 2014 to 2019, Advanced Disposal held this contract, And then from 2019 to current, Republic has this contract. So this, the rebid of this contract will be to not only operate our new and expanded transfer station, but it will start next year, and it'll go through, right now, the term on the contract is through 2032. So it's a 7-year contract. We put the RFP out. We received bids from 6 contractors. 2 of those bids were no bids, and one of those actually happened to be our current service provider, Republic. So we had 4 cost proposals as well as qualifications that were submitted. We reviewed those submissions. We had scored, basically the qualifications were 40% of the score and the cost was 60% of the score. And we shortlisted the top 2 contractors, 2 firms, and then we asked for a best and final offer from both of those contractors. We received those, and then we rescored the top 2, and we came up with a selection, a recommendation. And so we're bringing that recommendation to you all tonight. And if it gets approved tonight, we'll be bringing that recommendation to mayor and council on the 27th. Sorry, that's right. I'm just excited to get it done. And so just a little bit, so we are recommending the selection of Sea Green Services. We've had a long-term relationship with Sea Green. They've done excellent work for the city. They're a small local company, so they're where they store a lot of their equipment is roughly 1,000 feet from the Roswell line, so they're just over the Alpharetta border, so they're very close. And they actually currently hold the contract with the city with solid waste to provide cans, replacement cans, when those run out. So we've worked with them in the past, and we feel very strongly they're going to be a great teammate to have for the transfer station operations. So any questions?
Questions? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Sells, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously, and we'll move forward. Thank you very much. Good job. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Okay, thank you. And we will move then to the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for May 14th, 2024. And we will take it as listed in order. With item number 1, approval of the minutes of the Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee meeting for April 9th, 2024. We'll entertain a motion of approval of those minutes. Motion by Councilmember Johnson, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes? All right, thank you very much. As listed on the agenda, under administration, item number 2, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to award a contract to Midwest Employers Casualty for 2 years, workers' compensation reinsurance coverage with an annual premium of $174,965. Ms. Warren.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We're seeking approval for a 2-year contract with Midwest for excess workers' compensation in the amount of $174,965 annually. This is the same annual contract that we've come before, asking for renewal. This year, we're asking for 2 years renewal, and the reason why it saves on our retention/deductible. Now, we have a correction we need to make. In our paper, there's an increase of 3.93%, I believe, 93%. Actually, that's 0% in our increase, so we're gonna make that correction. So we're seeking approval for a 2-year with Midwest.
All right, thank you, Ms. Warren. Any questions for Ms. Warren, or any questions, comments regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Johnson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, we will note for the record, under Finance, we show no action items. Recreation and Parks, no action items. And then under Community Development, item number 3 is listed on the agenda. Consideration of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 13, Administration, Section 13.4.3, who can submit an application? Letter E, Ms. Jackie Dybel, the Deputy Director of Community Development. And I will take a moment to acknowledge the new Director of Community Development, Ms. Michelle Alexander. Michelle, can you stand and let everyone introduce you? Thank you. We believe that, certainly know that Michelle will be a tremendous asset to our team. All right, Ms. Dybel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packets, you have a request to change a portion of the text under 13.4.3, which states, currently states multifamily shall be allowed as a conditional use in the following locations within the city of Roswell. Currently, it says on a parcel of property which borders Georgia State Highway 9 or Georgia 140 east of Highway 9 or Highway 92. The proposed change would indicate multifamily shall be allowed as a conditional use in the following locations within the city of Roswell. Number 1, a parcel of property which borders Georgia State Highway 9 or Georgia 140 east of Highway 9 or Highway 92 is required to have 51% of the square footage of the development as non-residential uses. So the reason why this is being changed at this point in time, 2 years ago, 2022? 2022, the CX portion of the code was changed to have 51% as commercial/retail, with 49% to be residential. At that point in time, this one should have been included as well. Unfortunately, it was not. So what they're looking at, what we're proposing, or what we've been requested to bring forward, is to have it be compliant with the rest of the code, so that this section would match, and that all areas would have the 51% for non-residential uses. So the other section of the code does say commercial/retail, which actually Scott Long brought up at the council meeting last night during one of the items. But this one says non-residential, so we wanted to make that clear. So anybody could use a little bit different, maybe office, school, or church, or commercial retail uses.
All right. I'm sorry. Ms. Dybel, will you conclude it?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Do you have any
sorry.
questions?
Yes, yes.
Sorry.
Any questions? Mayor Wilson.
No, just thank you, Jackie. Thanks for being on top of this. Will, massive credit as the ComDev liaison for picking up on this. I know Ellen and David have been all over you on this as well, but I got to give you credit. The esteemed great Mike Palermo, who was the ComDev expert of the world, did miss this. So I got to give credit to Michael. If you're listening, you did miss this, and Will's caught it. So way to go, Willie, because we did thought we handled this 2 years ago. So thank you for catching it. And good stuff.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Palermo was asleep at the wheel.
Councilmember Beeson, do you have Councilmember Beeson?
So my understanding is the 51% of square footage for non-residential uses is only applicable to the CX zoning code, is that correct?
Currently, it's only applicable to CX. However, when this is approved and adopted, it would be any other zoning that would be CH, CC, the historic district, which technically in the historic district, you're not going to probably have too much of an issue there, but it would be in the historic district because that's on Highway 9 as well. But it would trigger CH, CC, which CH is located on Alpharetta Highway on the northern portion. That's commercial heavy. CX is also on Alpharetta Highway, which is already part of it. But the CC zoning, which is on Highway 92, or I'm sorry, on Highway 140, down there on the east side, and then Parkway Village as well. However, most of Parkway Village is developed. Most of that area at this point are small tracts, so you're probably not going to see too many larger developments that might be able to bring something in that big.
Would this be applicable to HD as well? The,
Historic district,
all the historic district zoning or the ones that just abut Highway 9?
just the ones that butt Highway 9.
Because the following section in this, if you're looking at the item, it's section E, subsection 1, where you have the red lines. The first paragraph after section 2, if neither of the above locations apply, multifamily would be allowed as a conditional use within the historic district at no more than 8 units per acre, or outside the historic district as a conditional use within a mixed-use development where the square footage of non-residential is greater than 75%. So would this override the 8 units per acre in the historic district?
So that's a good question. I don't believe it would,
This is just where it's allowed.
but it's just where, so under number 1, it's just specifically on here. I believe the 8 units per acre would still preside in the historic district.
Okay, so only the CHCC, CX, and PV zoning codes.
Correct. Now, you're looking at that, so the 75%, so you're thinking about the 75%, aren't you? So the 75% is on areas, so think of Rucker Road, that does not touch any of these that are listed in number 1. So, because Rucker Road is not on a parcel that abuts Highway 9 or east of 140 or Highway 92. So outside of the city areas, and I'm sorry, my map is not correct, so I didn't want to pass it out. I had one made, but I missed a street. So you're looking at this map here. Rucker Road is up in this area over here. So if somebody had commercial that's zoned NX, that's up in this area, it's not on one of these sections in number 1, that would still have the 75%.
Okay,
Okay?
got it.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments?
Yeah, I just want to
Councilmember
say thank you for
Sells.
working on this so much, and Will as well, because this squares up East Roswell in particular, in that corridor that has been so heavily developed with this, and I really appreciate that, and I know David does as well. So thank you, Will, and Jackie and David, for working on this so hard, and taking all our calls, and even 15, 20 minutes ago.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Beeson.
So a concern that I had when this was passed in 2022, and I've yet to get an example from anybody, can I beg those questions as a resident, not as an elected? Do we have any concrete examples of quote-unquote mixed-use developments wherein 51% of the square footage of the property is devoted to non-residential uses? Avalon would not be one. Most Halcyon would not be one. Most mixed-use developments in the metro area have significantly higher percentages of mixed-use residential. So do we have any examples of those?
Mr.
Mayor
Chairman.
Wilson.
Yeah, let's just be clear for the record that this council and this mayor have driven out a clear vision that we are going to not allow standalone multifamily in the city. Those days are over. And that's what this is really attempted to make clear to a developer, that if you want to come in and put a standalone multifamily development in, the city's not going to agree to it. And that's really what this is after. Because when you bring up questions about mixed use, much more complicated. I think the council, everybody here has an appetite for economic development, much more complex. So I don't want to send mixed signals to the community. Because what this is really after is my belief is the mayor and council wants to be very clear, not allow any gaps where there's an opportunity for a standalone multifamily development to happen on the east side. And what we found was there was a gap there, that there was still some potential. We thought we'd taken care of it, but we didn't. And so this is to address that issue. And so if we bring up multifamily, if we bring up mixed use, I think it's a different issue. I hear you loud and clear. I think the appetite's there for mixed use, which would include O&I, retail, mortgages, i.e. residential, and some multifamily. And I think there'll be a lot of really robust discussion about that when those developments come up. And I think we'll have very healthy discussions about that. And I think that this body has shown that there's an appetite based upon what's the deliverables in the overall development. But I don't want to confuse the conversation. I want to be very clear to the community that this is that the elected body is very clear. This is about not allowing standalone multifamily new developments to occur based upon our current inventory of stock already in the city of Roswell.
Councilmember Beeson.
Completely understood. These are the only zoning codes where mixed use could be developed, which is CH, CC, CX, PV, outside of the historic district where there are a little bit more specific codes related to mixed use. The reason why I asked that question is because there's no way that you can get a mixed-use development to pencil at 51% commercial and less than 50% residential. I realize that there are such things as mixed-use development where there are no residential components. It's office and retail, it's commercial mixed in some various ways. But the type of mixed-use developments that I've heard council say that they want and there's an appetite for, or I'll just use as an example, the Battery. The Battery is also not 51% commercial, shockingly. There's a lot of multifamily. I worry that by passing this code and changing all of your commercial development codes, you're making a de facto mechanism to prevent mixed-use development in the style that y'all would like to see. And what I mean by that is it's not standalone apartments. You're just limiting what mixed-use development we can have in the future, especially when you're allocating this 51% requirement. I have not seen that in local areas, and I will just say as an example, they recently had the North Fulton Municipal Association had their big meeting in Sandy Springs last week. The big pull quote from that was from Cousins Properties, who's doing a big ribbon cutting with Alpharetta on a mixed-use development, who said, I don't even look at Roswell.
That was Empire.
It was Cortland. It was Empire.
And Empire's never, that was,
Completely out of order.
and he's apologized for that comment because it was made
I could
in
understand
ignorance.
why that would offend.
It wasn't, I
I
didn't
wanna
find it
make sure that
offensive, I
we're-
just found it ignorant. Because anybody that's been dealing with the city of Roswell, Sarah, for the last 2 years knows just the opposite. That's why there's 19 developments that this city is currently working on, some very, very large developments, all of which are mixed-use developments. It doesn't make sense, though, and by the way, we're gonna deal with the UDC as a body. We're just not gonna deal with it this year, because we have a bandwidth issue. We've hired a new community development director, thank you, Michelle. And we're not gonna kill Michelle by saying, hey, by the way, Michelle, we need you to fix the UDC because it's a disaster, which it is, because as I have to remind anybody here at this body, the night it was passed, there were 124 text amendments, which Jackie suffered through. How many text amendments have you suffered through since 2015? Can't even imagine. We all know it's a disaster. It's not a manageable document. And so I think it's for us, we are in the body of deliberating economic development. It's sophisticated, it's elegant, and there's a lot to it. You know that. And so what I don't want to do is confuse our fellow residents. This is about one thing. This text amendment, this adjustment by Councilman Worthland, put in front of you and for the city attorney and from Jackie Dybels, the Assistant Community Development Director, under the direction of Will Worthland, is to say, we want to make sure that the city doesn't have any loopholes, that the standalone development happens on the east side of the city. That's all this is. We thought we did it in 2022. We did half of it. We discovered it thanks to you guys. Uh-oh, we missed it. That's all it's about. So bringing up mixed-use development, Sarah, with all due respect, has nothing to do with this. You know that. And you know that that is just kind of clouding this issue and making this more, this is being contrary for no specific aim.
Highly beg to differ with you. I can guarantee you that you're making it virtually impossible to develop the types of mixed-use developments that y'all are looking for if you're setting these percentages at an arbitrary number, which is just majority commercial.
How do you know
It's
that?
going to eliminate neighborhood spaces.
How do you know that? When you just said, I can guarantee you that it's going to make it impossible, when we're already in the middle of those conversations. So how could you say that? I'm not even tracking with you.
I can name 3 of the developments you're working with right now, none of which are outside, none of which use these zoning codes. And they're not in the districts that you're looking for intentional redevelopment, which is the Highway 9 Holcomb Bridge Road corridor. You're talking about in the historic district where it's
You're being
different zoning codes.
painfully ignorant of the facts. You know, you have to know. And if you don't know, you need to be much more integrally involved with what's happening on the ED side. Every developer we talk to, the book is open in terms of making it work for this city with a long-term picture in mind. This UDC is simply a distraction. You know it, I know it. It is not the guidelines for how we're guiding our long-term economic vision. It is simply an obstacle that we're having to manage on a daily basis, and we're going to fix it. It's just not priority one. Priority one is economic development for the city, not fixing UDC. And that's why I think these conversations are so dangerously misleading. And when, by the way, to your point, the guy at Empire, who's already apologized, who spoke out of ignorance, complete ignorance, he's not talked to the city. And he made a rambled comment, trying to look good in public, that he's apologized for. Because the case is Roswell is open for business. Roswell's made it very clear, and the level of developers and the size of developers that are talking to the city of Roswell on a different scale in many, many years. But this council, you, the elected council, are the guidelines for what's going to happen. And with all due respect, the UDC is a part of that guiding thing, but the real guiding is you guys at the end of the day. And you're going to make decisions about what it looks like. You're going to make ultimate decisions about what we accept. You got one coming next month. You got a development deal coming next month that's going to blow people's minds. And because of the elected body's wisdom over the last 24 months, it's taken an entitled project, which, by the way, under the guidelines of UDC, we would have been trapped. And thanks to the wisdom of this elected body and thanks to the wisdom of the senior leadership team, it's taken an entitled project and turned it into a fantastic mixed-use project. And by the way, the percentages are better than what you just said it's not going to happen. And this is from a sophisticated developer whose only interest is in making money. They're interested in, just like any developer, right? When people say it's not going to pencil, I don't know. I don't like to put any kind of standard capitalization say it doesn't pencil, because my experience with deals is let each deal fall upon its own legs and see what happens. And that's one of the things you have to be careful when you say you put pro rata percentages in there. Let a deal see what different. Every deal is different.
I 1000% agree with you in terms of every deal being different. That's also why I don't want to put arbitrary percentages with it. I would much rather it come to mayor and council to determine what the types of development that we would like to see as an elected body, and you can do that through conditions. The 51%, though, is arbitrary at best. I do beg to differ in terms of how it's going to guide mixed use throughout the entire city, especially in our commercial corridors where we have a lot of blight. And I'm also concerned about the long-term impacts to missing middle housing. But I realize that there's a difference in opinion. I don't think this is a new difference of opinion. This predated myself even being on council, and I don't think anybody in this room would be shocked that I would have this opinion. And it's not just to be contrarian. It's a firmly held long-term belief, and it's rooted.
Can you tell me what the belief is? Because and I don't mean this disrespectfully. What is your belief? Because I'm not clear on that.
I believe that we create, as an elected body, and I say we as the royal we, are creating a de facto mechanism that's going to limit the missing middle housing types that we struggle with here in Roswell. I don't think that this is necessarily to address standalone multifamily housing. I think that that was something that was addressed by mayor and council before I was even elected, and I think that by continuing to add to the death of the 1,000 cuts of the UDC, I realize that you're saying it doesn't guide economic development. I think the UDC is very germane to guiding economic development, and I feel like we're cutting off our legs before we can run. And this is not rooted in, again, being contrarian. It's rooted in the fact that I'm 6 months shy of being ABD for a doctorate in city planning, and I'm 1 year out from defense and defending for a PhD in city planning. Housing is something that's very top of mind for myself, and I want to, it was something that I inherently ran on, was making sure that we could protect some sort of housing options here in Roswell. I also realize that there's no amount of oxygen that I can expel, or in this case, carbon dioxide, on the issue that's going to sway anybody's minds
So
here.
just to be fair, so I want to make sure, I want to extrapolate what you said. You're very smart, and I agree with you. You're very smart, and you're working on a PhD, and massive credit to it. And I think you deserve great credit for that. And you have some expertise in city planning, and I think that's true, and massive credit to that. My question, though, was what is your belief set? And what I think I'm extrapolating is what you're saying is, I want more affordable housing, and I want more standalone apartments.
I want more workforce housing.
Okay, so those are great terms to use, by the way. And by the way, let's talk about the facts. It's a city of 100,000 people, 44 square miles, 65% of the inventory is taken up by single-family homes. We have 30,000 of our population already in multifamily. We have a disproportionate share compared to other North Fulton cities, with the exception of Sandy Springs, where city of Roswell, according to the guy who spoke off last week, is completely wrong about the facts, that the city of Roswell already disproportionately provides quote-unquote affordable housing and workforce housing at market-based pricing more than any other city in North Fulton County. And so what you're saying, and I want to get clear, is you want Roswell to add to that inventory more so disproportionately than our other cities when we already have a disproportionate share of affordable housing and workforce housing. And so, and what it's done, by the way, to economic values is not added to it, it's decreased economic values. It's put more strain on the city. So We're all, like, Roswell is already in the affordable housing, workforce housing game. By the way, Roswell is the only city in North Fulton that has a housing authority. So I get confused by the conversation saying, I want to put up more standalone apartments, because that's not what the body politic of the city of Roswell believes in, for good reason, because we already provide a disproportionate share of affordable housing and workforce housing in the city. And to say, hey, I want to add more to that, I don't think that's what the residents of Roswell want, number one. Number two, I don't think that's in the best interest of the city's quality of life and economic prosperity long-term. That's why there's a 20 to 50-year vision for the city on economic development. And that's why we're going to be very clever and very orchestrated about what economic development looks like. And that's why we're taking standalone multifamily off the table. We're taking it off the table because we don't think it's in the best long-term interest of values for the city, and because we've already made a commitment from an inventory perspective of affordable housing and workforce housing. So my question to you is, do you want more standalone multifamily apartments in the city of Roswell?
So the answer to that is, in the question itself, is do I want more standalone multifamily housing? We've already eliminated that in our code. This is making it harder to build any kind of multifamily housing as a part of a mixed-use structure, which is what I'm concerned about.
But that's not true, Sarah.
You've also used the terms interchangeably of affordable housing and workforce housing. Affordable housing is a federally designated term defined by HUD.
I'm not the one who does that. The media does that.
Heard.
And proponents of affordable housing and workforce housing consistently interchange those dynamics and semantics, but intentionally to confuse the discussion. So I just simply play along with the game, because people use those discussions because they're both loaded terms. Because guess what? Housing is very expensive. The city of Roswell is a city that people aspire to live in. I didn't move here to a certain age where I couldn't afford to live, and I joined this market at the bottom end from a housing perspective. There are cities that aspire to be like the city of Roswell. And the question you're asking, a very large-scale economic question, that's why I'm asking, what is your belief system? Because if your belief system is, I want to add more multifamily inventory, that's a legitimate belief. I'm just asking, that's clearly, is that what you're proposing? Because what we're saying is, from a body politic, is we're against adding standalone multifamily.
Are you against mixed-use multifamily?
Well, I think I said in the very beginning, our economic development, I've said this from the beginning, as unpopular as the position was, when in 2021, when I ran for mayor, I'm going to say something that's unpopular to everybody. Number one, I'm going to say we're not going to do any more standalone multifamily. Boom. So those who say, hey, we need more apartments, I'm saying, nope. But however, to those who are saying I'm anti-apartment, I said, nope, we are going to have components of multifamily housing in mixed-use development. And by the way, we'll start with pro rata shares as a starting point in discussions, because I too don't think everything is black and white, right? And every development is going to have a different ending point in it. So, and I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to predict the ending point on each and every development, because each one's going to be different. Because there's different components in different parts of the city where we need different triggers and things to happen. So if I said to you, that's why having a standard form sometimes can be a dangerous lockbox that traps you into bad decision making. Because there's some places where we're going to say, guess what? We're going to have 85% ONI and retail and 15% multifamily. And there's probably another place where we'll probably have 60% ONI and retail and 10% mortgages and 30% multifamily. And there'll probably be another place where it's going to end up 50-50. I'm not telling you that that's exactly how it's going to fall, but what I'm going to tell you is that those are going to be elegant structures, and they're going to be different based upon the economics of each deal. And what you ultimately decide as a body is in the best interest of the city for the next 20 to 50 years. But every one of those is going to be negotiated, and you're going to be part of that negotiation. So you know the answer to the question. You know I'm not against multifamily as part of a mixed-use development, because I have been propagating that since day one. And I have said to some of my friends who are against multifamily, period, no, it has to be part of a sophisticated mixed-use development. The question is how much that is. But what I want to take off the table is, if anybody thinks that Roswell is the solution for affordable housing or workforce housing, Roswell is already disproportionately providing solutions for that in relation to the North Fulton marketplace, disproportionately. And Roswell is not going to take on the responsibility in its 100,000 population as it moves to 120,000 population, because we're not going to become 200,000 people. This city, unless there's a new mayor elected and the new city council elected, says, doggone it, we want to be 200,000 people in 20 years. And that may be the will of the people. But what I understand the will of the people is, and when I ran on this was, we're going to be 120,000 people in 20 years. Okay, so we're not going to grow a lot in population, but we're going to grow economically very powerfully. And how we do that is going to take a lot of different pieces of the equation. And that includes mixed-use developments. And that is, and by the way, very clear, that includes multifamily in some of those developments. But different percentages, different proportions, based upon the development, the size of the development, where it's going in the city, what needs to happen, what the triggers around it, what's the long-term outlook around it, what's around it. There's a lot of pieces of that equation. So that's why when you say, hey, 5149 doesn't work, Sarah, I can't say that because I don't think that's just a cookie cutter answer. It's not relative to the distinction of each deal.
All right,
I'm jumping in here.
Councilmember Sells?
Thank you. So first of all, my goal in this whole thing was to even up the playing field. First and foremost, I wanted to make sure that the whole city enjoyed the same benefit of what was passed 2 years ago. The second thing is, I believe that what we're doing with this is saying, if you're wanting to build in Roswell, you better bring it. There better be some economic benefit for our residents, or we're not going to entertain it. That's what this is to me, is we're saying, you know, would we perhaps look at these one at a time? We are talking about some very, very interesting things that may retrade this very thing. So I'd ask you, what percentage should that be to fix the missing middle? What in your study would and fix that problem for Roswell? To fix this percentage, which is the matter before us.
Councilmember Beeson?
I don't think that we need to set a percentage. I think the mayor made an excellent point about you're applying a very broad strokes painting to something that each parcel is very different. We've already made it inherently illegal to build standalone multifamily housing. That problem has been, for the most part, solved.
Except in East Roswell.
No, all of the zoning codes that you guys have listed, with the exception of CX, already, for the most part, you cannot have standalone multifamily.
Well, I
So-
know of a particular parcel that was absolutely able to be built as multifamily
By right.
by right.
And so again, you're trying to paint with a very broad strokes for
Well,
one
so
parcel
what you're
that you're
saying is
solving
any
for.
percentage works except 51?
No, I don't want to apply percentages to the property. To go back to the original question that I was asked of what is it that I support, I'm taking affordable housing entirely out of the conversation at this point in time, because again, that's federally defined and that's subsidized. You're taking federal tax dollars and you're adding a subsidy that's going to offset the cost for the developer so that it becomes market affordable rate housing instead of control. The workforce housing that I'm discussing and what I'm very concerned about as it relates to economic development, especially since economic development has been top of mind as one of our collective priorities for the city of Roswell. The workforce that I'm worried about, especially, is young professionals. The city of Roswell has a higher benchmark compared to every single North Fulton city of those who are ages 60 and over. I don't know a single company, Fortune 500, Fortune 5 billion, that is trying to cite a city that has a significant population of retirees for their future workforce. We were just in a meeting today with the economic development team where the focus was placed on every single major employer cites their new city based off of how much potential workforce there is. If the potential workforce, whether it be a 22-year-old fresh out of Georgia Tech or a 45-year-old with several years of experience or decades of experience who has a young family, cannot find a place in Roswell, whether it be in multifamily or single-family homes, you are going to cut off your nose to spite your face in order to have some sort of economic development in the city, as opposed to getting into the weeds as to if 51% or 45% or 500%, whatever the actual percentage is, to me, is a non-starter. What you need to look at, especially as it relates to economic development, is what's going to bring those young professionals to Roswell so that we can develop economically. And I have significant concerns about what this looks like as it relates to mixed use, not standalone multifamily housing. Because multifamily is, for the most part, and I'm going to make the vast assumption each and every one of you when you were about 25 years old lived in an apartment, that's where they live. And I'm worried about that. I understand that there's fundamental differences of opinion. I understand that there's concerns about specific parcels in East Roswell. I'm concerned about the long-term ramifications. And as to not eat any more oxygen in the room, I will leave it at that.
Well, short of Soylent Green, I'm not sure how we solve the age problem in Roswell, except except over time. And
I'm not trying.
For the record, I am very appreciative of our retirees and those who have called Roswell home for decades, because Roswell is America's #1 family-friendly city. Family is grandma, but family is also the grandson who's looking for a new job and a place to start their family. So I'm trying to be all-encompassing with the understanding of what we're currently working with in terms of housing stock and residents, as well as, especially if we're targeting 120,000 people, that's about 25,000 people left, the type of folks that we are targeting to bring to Roswell. So with that, I will end my discussions.
Your points, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Wilson?
I know anything I say might create a counter response. I think you know our strategies are a little more elegant than that. I think you know that. It's not just, you know that we're just not simply we're not recruiting corporations to come land in Roswell. You know that, right? And so, and by the way, I don't want it to get lost in anybody. We have 30,000 of our residents that live in multifamily today. It's a significant amount of
and
people.
a very small percentage of them work in Roswell.
That's right.
Very small.
And they're all paying market-based pricing, by the way. And the reason I came up with, let me say I, forgive me, it sounds sounds self-aggrandizing, I apologize. The reason I came up with the 120,000 model was a response to somebody who came up with the question, how are you gonna grow? How are you gonna grow? And what does the growth model look like? And it was kind of like a Post-it note moment, and their answer was 250,000 people in 20 years. And it was an epiphany for me, oh my God. That is a legitimate belief system that a lot of people have, particularly the big smart people in the room outside of the city, for the puzzle piece of the city of Roswell, that Roswell is just a puzzle piece in the ARC, and that Roswell is supposed to be a puzzle piece in the ARC, and that the proper place for Roswell is to continue to allow people to inflow into the city based upon the non-sovereignty of the geographic limits of the 44 square miles, and that we're supposed to grow based upon the regional needs of the ARC, not the needs of the city of Roswell. And that, you know what, 250,000 is a logical response over 20 years. And by the way, your corridors, and I would say thank God that the people in this room decided to run for elected office and said, we're gonna change the course of the direction of this city, because the course of the direction of the city was not clear with a vision, was not clear with strategy, it was not clear with understanding that, hey, if we don't distinguish the distinct thinking from the ARC, the state of Georgia, et cetera, then this city will become a puzzle piece, and it will become 250,000 people in 20 years. And that's not what the city of Roswell, that's not what the people of the city of Roswell, particularly the 65% of people who are landowners, property owners, do not want Roswell to become 250,000 people. And so out of that came the 120,000 model, which is basically 1,000 people a year, which is illogical. I will see to you, it's an illogical economic statement. And thus, that's why everybody is intricately involved in economic development, because the strategy behind the scenes was we had to do something way out of the box and much different. In 2022, when we started master planning, at the end of 2022, this is all relevant conversation, and our residents need to know this. We did charrettes. We did economic charrettes. We brought in a master planner. We paid a lot of money to do that. And what we recognized was, this is a Me Too. This is not going to differentiate Roswell. This does not set us up for long-term 20, 30, 40, 50-year success. It's copycat stuff, and it's not going to be able to answer some of the great questions that you ask. And so that's why we brought in a world-class consultant in Peter Surkoff from SEER to say, help us figure this out, because we have got to come up with different solutions that other municipalities are not looking at on how we solve for our long-term economic needs and not grow our population out like crazy, because we only got 44 square miles. We already have and we're only going to add 20,000 people to the mix. How do we do that? And so I think sometimes when we get in these conversations, we forget that you and I are already on a path to a very sophisticated economic strategy. We've already made that turn. We're heading down that road. And so what I want to be careful sometimes, and when we bring these discussions, we're talking about stuff really from the old days. And really all this is honestly was We missed something 2 years ago. Thanks, Will, for picking it up. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, David. Thank you, David and Alan, for raising Cain about it. But we made a little miss, and we realized, somebody could build a standalone multifamily there on the east side. Better fix that. And that's really all this is. We could sit around for hours, and I can't wait to, and David talks about this, like, when we can talk about in greater detail our economic strategy. Because there's 19 development deals in the works right now for this city. And when you brought up, somebody from so-and-so said Roswell, that's the past. And the development community knows that. And if the development community doesn't know that, then they haven't talked to us. Because everybody in this table is open for business in a dramatically different way. Those are my comments, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Randy. I'm gonna call a spade a little bit. We all know that East Village, if the Target on the west side of Roswell would have closed down, East Village would not be built there.
That's
right.
correct.
This is closing that loophole, which I was personally, when East Village came up, I thought it would be a destination for East Roswell. And our city failed. Our city failed the residents of East Roswell with that development because it's not a destination. I'm sorry, my mom and dad live right next to it, and it is a failure on this city. What happened there? Nothing against the developer, nothing against that. It's not their fault. They developed, they bought the land, they did a thing. To Councilwoman Beeson's point, we also have to be careful that we are not handcuffing ourselves. So I'm kind of in both boats. I'm going to vote for this tonight, right? I don't love the percentage. I don't love, putting us in handcuffs. And I also have to understand, 50% of the median income in Roswell is $52,000 a year. That's a teacher's salary. So we talk about workforce housing, affordable housing. We're talking about our police officers. We're talking about our teachers. We need to be very careful here. We're not talking about someone who makes $9 an hour. These are professionals who are 25 years old who need places to live. And by the way, when the teacher lives in Sandy Springs and drives to Roswell North Elementary, they're creating traffic. Because every Roswell resident, every single development we talk about traffic. I want our teachers who work in Roswell to live in Roswell. I want our professionals doctors who work in Roswell to live in Roswell. And this is a good thing on cleaning up the code and making the code right for what y'all did 2 years ago, which I am not against, and I'm voting for tonight. At the same point, our code is broken. It is horrific. What happened to the UDC over the last 8-10 years?
Night one.
Huh?
Night one. What happened to it night one, the night
Right.
it was created?
Yeah, it is, yeah. We have the most convoluted, confusing code. Good luck. Welcome to Roswell. I mean, we had an hour conversation, and all we talked about was the UDC yesterday. So to the residents of Roswell who hear this, because you're right, we don't need to, make this into like unicorns and fairy dust. There's two sides of Roswell, right? There's people who want more apartments, and there are people who don't want another apartment ever built again. And I think me and you fly in this unknown middle, which is dangerous as can be.
It is.
And if anyone's listening to this tonight, which number one, God bless you, and number two, we have to find a way of making our code right for development. And I don't want to handcuff us with percentages. I think she has a point there.
David, I don't think that.
But
I think you're right about that. I think Sarah's right about that. But I just want to say,
But this
I'm asking this.
all
to be
this
frank.
is a check on the box.
That's all this is. Like,
I get that. That's why I'm voting for it.
we can get into a very, very deep conversation, which we already have, which honestly, we could get into a much deeper conversation. Like, some of the things you just said, those are like, they're an invitation for a much broader conversation, right? And that's why I said, guys, what this is really about is making sure that we don't build any standalone apartments in the east side of Roswell. That's all this is about.
Right.
That's all this is about. And I agree with you.
Campaign that I went to, I said I'm not for that.
When we fix this UDC, it's going to be simpler, right? It's going to be plainer. It's going to be easier to adjudicate. And it's going to be easier to say, this is what the elected vision of the elected leaders of the city of Roswell want incorporated in their zoning documents.
So my final statement is, voted for this tonight, but we have a lot of work to do. And you're right, it's not priority one.
It's not.
And our staff, God bless you guys. I know their bandwidth is beyond full, but when there is a chance to come up for air, this thing has to get fixed.
You heard me say this last night, and I'd say this to, like, you heard me say this to an applicant. Don't put an application in the city of Roswell on a development piece until you've talked with the city council and mayor. Like, don't do the old way. You're strangling yourself. Because the mayor and city council can't talk to you once that application's in. And the mayor and city council can give you some clarity and guidance before you put the application in. That's where really the work needs to be done. That's what we're doing now. I mean, we're doing the discipline of that work today. We're not having applications come in on these deals because we're working them out. We're working them out ahead of time as an elected body before they get to the city. Because once they get to the city, they need to be streamlined. They need to be they need to be good to go. Not put the burden on the staff, which is what we've done historically. And that's another thing, like to your point. Your point is correct about a lot of this. This is a complicated, there's 3 people that know this document. One of Jackie Dybel, Lenore, who's no longer here, and Michael Palermo. And obviously, Michael, if you're listening, you didn't know it as well as you thought you did because you missed this one, buddy. But I mean, that's what we always said, like, nobody knows this document. And people go find loopholes and they work around the loopholes. And so your point's well taken on the percentages.
We need a clear code.
100%.
It can be restrictive, but it needs
Yes.
to be clear.
Yes.
And we have an unrestricted, restrictive, and unclear code.
100%.
Which makes, it's like being an Auburn fan, you still, you don't know if you're a War Eagle or a Tiger,
Are you an Auburn fan?
All right, thank you, very good
With that
discussion.
said, I'll make a motion.
Wait, one
All
second.
right, we have all right.
5 seconds.
I don't believe you, Sarah. There's no way.
I can do it in 5 seconds. I just wanted to correct the record in the sense that on page 44 of the Roswell Comprehensive Plan, it states very clearly that those who live in multifamily housing are actually more likely to work in the city of Roswell and less likely to own more than 1 car per household, more likely to ride, share, bike, or walk to work. That's it. And with that, I will let Councilmember
Well,
Johns make the motion.
5 seconds. All of us in this city who love people who live in multifamily apartments, live in apartments of multifamily housing in the city, please raise your hands.
I didn't say you did it. It was
I
a
just
stat
wanna
that
be
was given
clear.
earlier in the
I-
meeting that I was
like-
making clear was clarified.
I think we've done studies on this for East Roswell. Those are not working in Roswell, I can assure you.
It's in the comprehensive plan done by Pond.
Yeah,
Well, here's the good news. We're going to be writing the 2045 comp plan. Aren't we, Michelle? Pretty soon. And it's going to have the doctrinaire of the current elected body all over it.
I do want to say that, trying to fix national problems of no turnover in this level of housing that we're talking about in the Roswell City Code is a fool's errand. Okay, because the Wall Street Journal is covered up with the fact that baby boomers are not selling their house because they're in 3% mortgages. Quite frankly, nobody's selling their house because they're in 3% mortgages. And so, this is not something we're going to fix by changing this percentage from 51 to 25. That's just not the case.
Well, and I will say one other thing, it's to the point of workforce housing for police and fire. When I was a candidate, I looked at that ideal, said, I want my police and fire to live in my city. Sounds like a great ideal, right? I want them to live in my city. And you know who corrected me on that? The police chief and the fire chief. And they said, I don't want to live in your city. I said, really? You don't want to live in my city? I want you to live in my city. You're going to come on and live in my city. And they said, we don't want to live in your city. Not because of pricing, but because of quality of life. And I said, that's really interesting because I thought I knew better on this. They said, no, you don't know better. We don't want to live in your city. We work in your city. We love your city. But most of us don't want to live in your city. And I said, from a housing cost perspective, I said, oh no. From this quality of life perspective, we want our peace. And you know what? Now as a newly elected official, you probably can relate to that.
But there are teachers, nurses, physician assistants, who,
Listen, workforce, affordability housing is a real crisis in the
Real
country. You'd be foolish to say that it's not a real problem. It is. And the problem has gotten larger. It is. And it's really easy to say, hey, you need to fix that. It's much more complex than that. I saw one of our esteemed senators, who I think very highly of, brought up a piece this day in the AJC about, hey, there's support for workforce housing for police and teachers. And you know why? Because it sounds good politically and it gets votes and because people get behind it. But it's much more complex than that. It is.
We also don't need to be a roadblock either. We can't fix it, but we don't also need to just be no, right? There's ways with multifamily in commercial developments, like the 19 projects that we have coming up, where nurses and teachers will be able to afford to live in these places.
But those projects are led by economic development. In other words, they are, yes, it is true they will have an element of residential, but the objective is to reduce the tax burden on our residents.
That's
That's
correct.
what it's about.
Agreed.
Councilmember Morthland.
Thank you, Jackie, for working on this. I would like to make a motion to move this forward.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Morthland. Do we have second by Councilmember Hills? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, this item will move forward.
You got to vote, I think, the other way.
He wants to give me my.
Sorry. I'm sorry. This item moves forward.
For old time's sake.
We have any opposed? Okay, we have opposed. Thank you very much. Sorry I missed it. All right, that does conclude our committee meeting for this evening. We'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Sells. Further discussion, all in favor? Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Have a good night.